Wait a minute. So we're taking a massive amount of greenhouse gases and saving the planet with it. Okay. The way Weir subverts your expectations and turns it on your head. I mean, it's happened 3 or 4 times, and this is just my favorite time now. Hello, and welcome back to the couch. We saved you a seat. My name is Luke, and today we're checking out Chapter 14 of Project Hail Mary. You all know the deal. If you're here by now, I saw the trailer, love the book, started reading it, wanted to put reactions. I'm not a big book reader, so most of it's going to be kind of a recap, but some of it's going to be how I feel about what's happening. It's kind of like a book report. But if you want to follow along, I've got a link in my Amazon or whatever down in the description below. Click the Amazon link, go buy the book, follow along, have some fun with us. Movie comes out in March, so you'll be all caught up. Here we go. So the last thing we remember is old Dr. Loken was flirting. She was flirting. I love this because I was wondering when there was going to be romance. I wasn't sure if it was going to be Strat and somebody or if it was going to be Loken. Maybe the crew member who's Russian on the spaceship. Maybe her and Ryland. I wasn't sure. But, like a little cute something. No cute something. Anyway, so we continue with our flashback and listen, tries to assemble her Avengers team. Dimitri and Loken and Ryland. The other guy, Bob, he's putting those plates in. So he's not part of this team. But Stratton introduces the team to a climatologist named Dr. Leclerc. I'm just gonna call him Dr. L. Because my French accent is hilariously bad and butchered. So we're not gonna do it. Leclerc. I think it's pretty close, but who cares? Essentially, this guy is a peace-loving, anti-war climatology hippie, and he's also the best in the world at his job. And so Strat brings him in and wants to figure out exactly, with the sun dimming, how much time, based on his models, the Earth has left. And he drops a bomb on them, pun intended, that he thinks that after 19 years, half the Earth is going to be dead. Freaks him out because it doesn't fit inside of Strat's timetable of like 26 or 27 or 28 years. How are they going to figure this out? And so then Strat mentions something about greenhouse gases, and Leclerc's like, huh? And he's like, I mean, I guess that would work. It would keep the temperature on Earth not too terrible, but like the weather's already changing quite a bit, with tornadoes in Europe, and those panels that are in the Sahara in North Africa aren't really helping. Yeah, I guess I could figure it out. So Strat abducts another Strat Avenger, and we get back to the present. And so now we're in the present. It took 3 hours and like 50 additional words, but Ryland was able to communicate to Rocky exactly what radiation was, and also communicate to Rocky that due to the placement of their planet, how close it was, the molten core that they have, the iron molten core they have, it's deflected and rejected radiation from hitting the planet. Yeah, super sad. And you also come to find out that Ryland now calls it arid. Or maybe he figured that out before, but I have it written down, arid. But yeah, radiation 100% does not reach the ground. They said the next conversation took about another hour, but essentially the Iridians' space travel up to the point of their ship leaving concluded with them creating an orbital station that's connected to an elevator. Apparently, they're like fantasy dwarves with their capability to build and use materials in order to provide more success for themselves. Kind of interesting that they're like fantasy dwarves. That's actually because they have like rock shore, mining and smelting and all that stuff. One mystery still remained: how did Rocky survive? And so they find out that Rocky's job was something to do with engineering, so he spent a lot of time near the engines, and the engine room had astrophage on the walls all over. And essentially, since he was in there so long, the radiation didn't get to him. So Rocky had to watch the rest of his crew die. while he lived, which sucks. It sucks. Then Rocky asks Ryland if he should do the same and protect himself with astrophage, because Ryland communicated you should probably put astrophage all over the tunnel if you're staying here and everything in order to maintain life. And Ryland says it's okay, and like half lies to him and says, you know, Earthlings, humans are used to radiation, so we're fine. But really, it was just like, yeah, it's a one-way trip. And it had been such a heavy conversation that he didn't want to tell him that it was a suicide mission, since they had grown, you know, so close together. Ryland then asks him like a hypothetical question, which is something that I kind of wondered too. How did they meet at the same time, near the same time at the same place, with the same self-sufficient technology, in order to do this? And you know, Rocky claims that it's coincidence, but it's also kind of preordained, in that people before this time wouldn't have had the technology or capacity or capability to be in this point in space-time, because they would have died off. And people after this time would have already had it figured out, or the technology not to be affected, or to take effect on astrophage when it comes to the sun. So really, the only reason why they're together at the same time isn't because of anything that's crazy. It's really just it's not a coincidence either. It's simply just a matter of they just happen to be in the same place at the same time. And that's where they kind of come to. Ryland then also believes that maybe astrophage as a single-celled organism was maybe the progenitor to life on Arid as well as life on Earth. They may be distant cousins because of their cells have the same material in it. Interesting thought. The astrophage, the Iridians, and the humans. Possibly. Pretty interesting. He said he argued with Loken on it a few times. But anyway, so we continue back to the flashback. And Strat and her Avengers are on the deck of the Chinese aircraft carrier. They're 1,500 miles off the west coast of Antarctica, and Leclerc he's having a moment, right? He communicates with Ryland. You know, I've been pro climate, anti-war my entire life, and I'm the one who shot nukes or released nukes or exploded nukes in an Antarctic shelf to release ice into water, to melt it, to have the methane go into space and to orbit to protect the planet for like 10 years. You know, that's gotta be tough. You know, it's a hard thing to deal with. It feels like all of Strat's Avengers have this kind of, like, they're not perfect, but they're right for the job. However she found these people who were right for the job, brilliant. I hope they convey that well in the movie. Weir does a good job with it as well. It's really cool. This is the part where Weir's in his bag, because he's coming up with a way to subvert and change your expectations, right? Even the most novice of people like me about climate change can understand the gravity, pun intended, of the situation here. Like, it's wild. It's wild. But it's smart. It's not smart. It's thoughtful, right? Because they say in the book, I don't know how true this is, but like in the book, they said like methane will dissipate in the atmosphere after 10 years. So if they need to do more, they can just do more. And there's a lot more where that came from. So they could stave off the astrophage issue for a while if they needed to, better than they thought they could. And it's also simple to execute. We can just execute the thing. The water only comes up a centimeter. It's it's thoughtful. We're in his bag on this one. This is maybe my favorite chapter up until this point, because of the characters involved, because of how relatable it is, and it's like it's a pretty distinct point in the story. It feels like we're at a point now where we're getting ready to go to space. We've got our fuel, we've got our way to address planet issues. Yeah, it feels like the only thing that's kind of missing from some of the pretext in terms of the flash forward is the coma stuff. And the crew, obviously. So we're not to the crew or the coma stuff yet. But yeah. Anyway, at this point, we fast forward to meanwhile, back on the ship, Rocky and Ryland are talking about biology and physiology and how the iridian body kind of works, in that it works similar to a steam engine, and that it heats up and expands and then it cools and contracts. And part of its body in terms of its bloodstream is 210 degrees Celsius. Part of it's different, and they have a rock carapace and they have some organics on the inside, but essentially a lot of their structure is like iron and different metals, and apparently their blood is liquid mercury. Like I said, they're kind of just like rock creatures from a planet with intense pressure that have some sort of organic on the inside that evolved to having 5 arms for whatever reason. Also, he finds out that Iridians don't sleep. They go into this form of like, well, they don't sleep like we do. Like when we sleep, there's a level of consciousness, but when they sleep, it's like a paralyzation, I guess, and their entire body kind of just goes limp, and they can't be woken up in that regard. So that's why they sleep with a mate, partner, someone to watch them. Or, Ryland assumes it's for safety. Meanwhile, like, Rocky is fascinated with the concept of seeing, which I would be too. I mean, I'm fascinated with the concept of his ultra sensitivity to vibration. We've talked about this before. I think it would be so cool having the sensitivity to, what if you perceived things on such a vibration, molecular level that you can see this. You can see this wall behind me as a wall, and it vibrates at such a frequency that you see the vibration in a different wavelength than you would see light bouncing off my forehead into the camera or whatever. I think it'd be dope. And so it's cool to see like Rocky be so fascinated with his concept of light, and that Ryland can also hear too, but not as well, obviously. But we have like 5 senses and the apparatus to do all of those things. Then Rocky points at the wall, and Ryland says, yeah, it's see-through. I can see you with the light from around me. And Ryland was explaining what his eyes are, and he said that the hexagon that's on the wall, the one he picked, was the one that was transparent, right? Whereas Rocky chose all the different kinds of hexagons because of the different kinds of vibrations, right? They're both indicators of what was happening, but Rocky had never even thought of the possibility, which I thought was cool. He saw them as different qualities of sound, which is interesting. Rocky then states that he's finished the device he'd been working on while Ryland was asleep. Rocky explains that it's a way for him to travel onto the Hail Mary, and Rocky built it so he could see the human technology, that everything human science is better than the Iridian science, which I don't know how true that is. The technology might be better, but the science, I don't know. Their ability to schmelt and do all these other things is pretty high level. So when they say that, it's kind of weird, because I'm like, well, no, you guys made it in a starship 3 times larger than the Hail Mary, and it's maybe 3 times more durable, and it's just crazy. Anyway, but he wants to see the other part of the ship. And so after a few more questions about the airlock and the tunnel and how they're going to do it, and radiation, of course, Rocky has already thought it through, and Ryland picks up his stuff and heads back to the airlock. And that's the end of the chapter. So here we are. I think Ryland's going to have a bunkmate, which is cool. I'm glad they're going to get to be on the same ship. I wasn't sure which way it was going to go, to be frank with you, but my brain told me that the amount of air pressure that Rocky is accustomed to 29 times, 28 times is wild. And there is no way without some sort of fantasy weird thing that Ryland was going to overcome that obstacle. So it's cool that Rocky's going to spend time on the ship. Maybe they'll get to do some science together. Maybe they'll solve the problem together on the Hail Mary. Seems like he's going to have a bunkmate at the very least. That's the end of the chapter. It's just a simple recap. I love telling you how this stuff makes me feel because I'm not a big reader. And so having this experience of taking in the literature, taking in what the writer is trying to convey and subvert, and in this case, subvert expectations, pretty cool to me. Listen, I appreciate your time. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Buy the book if you want. It'll help us out. And we'll be ready tomorrow for the next chapter, chapter 15. So until next time, later, Tater.